Thank you so much all for joining. I'm Kassy. Today we're going to be talking about how to create shareable news videos for social media. So a little bit more about me, just quickly, just to sort of summarize. So I'm an independent journalist and audience strategist. I used to work at BuzzFeed News and also at Bloomberg QuickTake. While I was at BuzzFeed, I was running the BuzzFeed at World Instagram account, which became the fastest growing news account on Instagram in 2018. And it was really exciting because it was all young people, and it really sort of demonstrated that young people really want news and they want to consume news and sort of in different methods beyond just sort of I guess like an article on the website. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about those examples and then some of the examples from my own work, which is Almost. So I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Almost, which is an Instagram first media outlet focused on telling world news stories for young people. So I like to think of it as Humans of the World meets Teen Vogue. And so the goal of Almost is to inform young people, and in particular young women, about important issues that are going on around the world. And then the second part is to sort of reflect the diverse and young audience and to make sure that we're highlighting underreported communities and minorities and their stories and their experiences so that we can sort of empower people to sort of equip the young people with the knowledge they need in order to go out into the world and to make a meaningful difference. And so I'm going to be showing some examples from Almost and some of my own work from previously today as we sort of go through this journey of social videos and how to make them interesting and shareable and have people want to engage with them. So what is a social news video and when should I use video? So I always like to open with this video, which is a video that we made when we were at BuzzFeed. And so I will open with it first and then we can talk a little bit about it afterwards. So this is just an example of a social news video.
This is the Supreme brick. It's bubble wrapped? Like what? To spend this much money on a singular brick is going to be really, really interesting for me. I'm breaking the seal on my Supreme brick. And here we go. So, yeah, it's a brick. It says Supreme, and I paid 30 pounds for it. Okay, I'll be very honest. This is a pretty nice brick. Like, it's pretty cool. It's smooth. I'm like slowly getting it. Like it's like the idea that no, this is stupid. It's a brick. Like it's a nice brick. It's a good brick.
So I really like to share this video because it is just something that we totally came up with just sort of off of the fly, just randomly, because when I first joined BuzzFeed, I was basically hired to start sort of experimenting with news videos. And this was around the time that Facebook had really started doing this big push on like videos on the platform. And so our team was really sort of trying to figure out how we can use videos to tell news stories. And so we were basically just sort of running around London at the time, just sort of trying to film a bunch of stuff and trying to edit together some things to figure out how we can use video as an effective form of storytelling. And so the story behind this video is we basically saw on Twitter that everyone was sort of talking about the Supreme brick and how ridiculous it was, and it was 30 pounds, and apparently people were like queuing up for it. And then we realized, hey, we live in London and the BuzzFeed office is so close to the Supreme shop was just down the road in Soho. So why don't we go? And so we're like, okay, why don't we like try and do a video about this, because we're trying to make more videos. So we were like, okay, let's go to the store, and then then maybe we can interview some people and see if they're going to buy this brick. And so we go there, and then there's a massive queue outside because it's also the launch of their new collection. And so we start interviewing some people, and then they're all like, we're like, hey, are you buying this brick? And they're like, yeah, we saw it, but we're not going to buy it. And so we're like, oh, so we ended up, asking a lot of people, and nobody was actually buying the brick. And then we were like, no, but this is such a shame. Like, we're here. What can we do? And then I said, why don't we just buy the brick? And so this is a result of us being like, okay, sure, let's just like film this experience of us buying this brick. So we queued up, as you saw in the video, and then we went in the store. We were not allowed to film in the store, so there's no footage inside. But then, yeah, we bought the brick, and then we put this little video together, and then it went super viral on Facebook. I think it did like 13 million views or more. And so this is just sort of, I really like to open with this video because it just sort of shows you that, you don't necessarily have to it makes videos very seriously, and you can sort of experiment with a lot of different things when it comes to videos, because it's like a totally different form of storytelling. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that as we continue. So yes, so the question is, why should we use video for news? Well, most importantly, habits are changing. So if we're sort of thinking about how people are consuming content and news these days, audiences are increasingly spending the majority of their time on social media platforms, such as Instagram and TikTok, which just hit 1 billion users, I think, monthly recently. And then as you've sort of realized, there's more of a push of these products of sort of like vertical storytelling styles, sort of TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. And a lot of times people are spending a lot of time on their phone rather than on their computer. And so if you think about sort of how young people are consuming content, they're not sort of whipping out their laptops and then like opening the web page, so opening Chrome and then typing, NewYorkTimes.com and then, going to read the news there, but they're, instead scrolling on TikTok. So which allows us to be able to sort of reach younger and wider audiences if we're sort of creating these videos for these social media platforms where our target audience and the future generation are sort of spending their time. And so we should be delivering the news to audiences wherever they are in ways that make sense to them and also feel natural on the platforms. So here are just some of the benefits of visual storytelling. So the first is that, people are really visual beings. If you think about it, at the end of the day, like seeing somebody is like really the saying that like, a picture is worth 1,000 words is, people say that a lot, but it's also true because, a visual can sort of really grab people's attention rather than sort of looking at words. And then also it allows you to sort of tell sort of people experiences. And because people are visual, they also relate to people. And then being able to show people really sort of helps to establish a more intimate connection. So here's just an example of a video that I made for the BuzzFeed World account, which I think sort of really captures that spirit. Oh. So as you can see, this video sort of helps to, I guess, humanize in a way with a topic that, a lot of people don't really sort of just sweep away because, like refugees, people are just like, oh, it's dirty and whatever. But then, if we're able to sort of like see real people, it's like a really it's a way for people to better understand and connect with a topic that may be a little bit foreign to them because, maybe their country doesn't necessarily have refugees, or it's halfway around the world, or, people don't feel like it necessarily impacts them in their daily lives. And then that's also sort of related to the next point, which is that, we can use videos to sort of use as a different form of storytelling because it allows us to sort of, I guess like touch on, tell stories about topics that are a little bit more complicated and offer different sort of elements to it to help people to better understand a topic. So here's an example of an explainer that I made for BuzzFeed at the time when the Hong Kong protests first kicked off, and there was just sort of, there was a lot of news happening. And so this was sort of an explainer about what was going on in Hong Kong at the time.
There are all the places around the world that are...
Sorry, I messed up the play.
Hong Kong is a former British colony that was returned to China in 1997 under the one country, two systems policy. The policy allows Hong Kong to retain its own government, independent courts, press, and economic systems for at least 50 years after unification. On June 9th, more than 1 million people held a massive protest against an extradition bill announced by Chief Executive Carrie Lam. The bill would allow Chinese authorities to extradite anyone in Hong Kong they suspect of crimes, including dissidents, activists, and foreign visitors to China, where courts are controlled by the ruling Communist Party. The bill is backed by the Chinese government, who approved Lam as the chief executive. Protesters see the bill as China encroaching on Hong Kong's independence and rights as a semi-autonomous region. After days of protests, Lam suspended the bill indefinitely and apologized. But she stopped short of withdrawing the bill entirely and refused to step down as protesters demanded. Protesters rejected her apology and took to the streets in even larger numbers, with 2 million out of the 7 million people in Hong Kong showing up. It set the record for the largest protest in Hong Kong's history. Protesters say they will continue demonstrating until the bill is fully withdrawn and their demands are met.
And so in this video, what we can see is that, with you're able to complement telling the story by showing the historical footage, and we can go into the history of it and provide more context beyond just words and the maybe visuals on a page. And so we're able to give a more comprehensive contextual understanding of the story. And then the third point is that, it is easier for audiences to consume on the go. It is, they're usually on their phones, people are commuting or just on their phones in general. And so, they don't really have the time or attention span anymore to be reading long form articles, which are super important still. But a lot of times, they're just switching in between these apps, and we can deliver these bits of information to them and news to them in really efficient ways and allow them to really quickly understand what's going on. And so here is an example of a TikTok that I made for Almost, which you can see here.
There are all the places around the world that are on fire. Greece, Canada, Morocco, Italy, Spain, France, Siberia, Algeria, Tunisia, California, and Turkey. Oh, and Turkey is also experiencing flooding at the same time.
So as you can see, that was probably a 20-second video, but I've been able to, if I was on TikTok, I've been able to understand that right now there's a lot of wildfires going on around the world, and I can list a few of them. And this is probably going to let me think about climate change and its effects. And that didn't take me. I didn't have to all it took was 20 seconds of my time. Cool. So now that we've gone through the benefits of social news videos, let's talk a little bit about what social news video is. It's very simple. It's essentially a video of a news story that is created for social media. So here are just three examples. There's going to be a lot of examples here, but hopefully it gives you some inspiration as to the different types of videos you can be creating. So here is the first one.
It's the World Cup,
a
wonderful sporting event that unites people around the world for 4 glorious weeks. But it has treated women like total crap. So the World Cup was going to be a great moment for Vicky Sparks. She was going to be the first woman to commentate on the World Cup in the UK. Instead, she was trolled for being a woman.
Then of course there is Patrice Evra, who started clapping because he was so surprised that his female co-host could actually sum up sports.
Meanwhile, women journalists in Russia have had it even worse.
Multiple women reporters have been assaulted for just trying to do their job. They've been kissed and groped whilst live on air. Getty Images even put together a World Cup hottest fans collection, and it was just women.
So after a huge outcry, Getty finally removed the album and apologised. Burger King Russia offered women a lifetime supply of Whoppers if they got pregnant with a football player during the World Cup.
People of course got mad, and then they apologised, but they're also kind of known for doing this sort of stunt. But hey, all this football is just a warm-up for the real World Cup next year. See you guys in France.
So this is just a video that we were this is a type of video storytelling we were experimenting with when Instagram first launched IGTV, and I was like, oh, okay, let's try and do a co-hosted video. So this was sort of a different type of vertical storytelling at the time. Also, I noticed that the videos weren't in the same order, so I'm not actually sure which one is going to play next, but let's see. So yeah, that is another form of social video. It can be very, very simple, just, an albatross face planting. And then we have this third video, which is a video that we made for Almost.
しゃい。いらっしゃい。どうぞ。
じゃあこれ。
はい。
ポテト。
ポテト。
So this video was actually a video of another video, but we reached out to Morikawa Papa, and we asked him if we could potentially use this video, and then we cut it into our own video. So this is another form of sort of user-generated content that you can then sort of repurpose into your own sort of videos. Awesome. So now we know what social news videos are. Here are, the question is, okay, so when do we use videos? No, the first one is very simple. Stories that are inherently about a video, then we probably can just turn it into a video because we already have video footage of it. So here is the perfect example of the PE teacher that captured the Myanmar military coup when she was dancing. And it is literally a video of her.
Sorry ko na, abang bang jago. Abang bang jago.
So I'm sure a lot of people saw this video going viral on Facebook at the time. And, it could be as simple as reaching out, getting permission, and then turning it into your own video because it's literally about the event. Then there are things such as, stories with people, emotions, and strong visual elements. So for example, this is a video from QuickTake that we made, which features a really strong emotional element that can't really be captured the same way that you can through like a photo or through text. And you'll see why when you watch this video.
통일! 저희 성별 정체성을 떠나 제가 이 나라를 지키는 훌륭한 군인 중 하나가 될 수 있다는 것을 모두에게 보여주고 싶습니다. 제게 그 기회를 주십시오. 저는 대한민국 군인입니다. 감사합니다. 통일! 이 육군 자체가, 이 군 자체가 아직도 이 성소수자에 대한 그런 배려가 진짜 없다고 생각합니다. 저희가
So as you can see in this video, it's very, very powerful because you can see the emotion immediately. And then you can also hear the emotion sort of in her voice and the way that she delivers. And this is not something that you can necessarily sort of capture the same way through text. And obviously beautiful writers who write beautifully can definitely do that. But it's sort of a different, sort of more visceral, sort of physical experience to be able to actually witness something like this. And then that also sort of leads me on to the next point, which is that, we can use videos in stories where, visual, like moving visuals can offer more depth than text and photos. So here is another example of an explainer, which we made right at the beginning before when Naomi Osaka won the US Open for BuzzFeed.
Osaka was born in Japan to a Japanese mother and a Haitian father, and they moved to the US when she was 3. In Japan, biracial people like her are called hafu, which means half Japanese, and this word can sometimes mean that they don't fully belong to the Japanese nationality. Some people have said that Osaka is not Japanese because she doesn't have the stereotypical Japanese appearance, but others have said that looks don't define identity, and criticized Japan's long-time obsession with homogeneity. In 2015, Ariana Miyamoto also the first biracial woman to become Miss Universe Japan, was criticized for not being truly Japanese. People also had mixed feelings about how the Japanese media praised Osaka's victory as their own. They pointed out that they only praised Hafu in these kinds of occasions, while many are treated as outsiders in everyday life. Osaka has said she doesn't identify as American, but also doesn't see Japan as her home. She has said that her multinationality is her strength because it allows more people to connect with her.
So in this video, in the fact that we use video, we were able to I guess like explain and identify the multiple facets that are surrounding her identity. And then it's also got the added layers of, we're able to have a Japanese reporter actually explain this issue from sort of like the local standpoint and what that means. And then also we have like the photos of her to visually complement what she's talking about, so that people can understand the stereotypical Japanese appearance and how she doesn't necessarily identify or look like the stereotypical Japanese woman, for example. So we can think of videos as a way to add extra layers to the storytelling that you're doing. The same way that you would when you're writing an article, you might want to add extra details about, this is the room that, describing the room that you're interviewing this person in, what they were wearing and that kind of thing. But this is just a literal and physical embodiment of it so that people can literally see it. So where do you find stories? So stories are everywhere. You can find video stories the same way that you can find a news story. So you can always ask yourself, whenever you see like you're covering a news story, you can always think, can this be a video? And then, we'll skip to the right there, but you would think, for example, number one, is there a video clip of this news story? As we spoke about, yes, like she literally filmed the Bienmaku happening behind her. Does this story have a strong visual element? If so, does it have like, motion? Does it have emotion? Does it have, movement? Does it have people speaking? Is it something that is, moving essentially? Can I experience this? So for example, there's a new restaurant opening. Would it be cool for me to like go and try out this new restaurant? And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then the other thing is this something that can be told through a human element? And then how can we incorporate that? But then also at the same time, you must remember that, not everything has to be a video either. And so sometimes, maybe just a photo is enough, and you don't want to necessarily force a video when it doesn't feel natural, because you're trying to make a video of something that doesn't necessarily need to be a video. Great. So now that we know a bit about social news videos, let's talk a little bit about the principles of good social news videos and social storytelling in general. So the first one you want to focus on is you want to be able to tell the story. So as you can see on the left here, I'm just going to play this clip, and then we can talk a little bit about this.
ไม่ต้องถาม
Okay, so if you've just said, okay, we found this video, I want to make a video about it, and all I've done is I've taken this clip and then I've just shared it. This is really difficult as someone who does not, for your audience to understand, because it's not clear who this person is and what the video is about, because all I'm seeing is this person talking and then spraying some hand sanitizer. I don't really understand the context. What is the news story behind this? So we need to tell people, what is it that they are watching and why are they watching it? And so we need to tell them the story. And so it can be as simple as putting a text box on top of it, headline on top of it. And so when you watch it on the right side, it says, Thailand's Prime Minister sprayed journalists with hand sanitizer to avoid answering their questions. And then if you watch this video, it makes sense, because, I've been able to put in context for the viewer, because viewers don't necessarily, people are on their phones. There's so many things going on. They don't necessarily have the time to wait, or if they see something that they don't understand, they're probably just going to scroll by it because there's so much content out there. They don't necessarily have to consume this piece of content. So we want to be able to just tell them immediately what the story is about, and why they are watching it and why it's important. So I'm just going to play it, but you'll see you can see the contrasting difference. Also on sort of a very basic level, we've done some editing so that we've cut some of it so that it gets to the point quicker. But, it also has sort of a linear sort of thing where it's like, saying no to, saying thank you, or, leaving the podium and then spraying. So it's like, making sure that you have sort of like a narrative of like the beginning, the middle, and then the end whenever you're sort of trying to edit together a video. So the next thing that you want to focus on is the principle of show, don't tell, which everybody speaks about, but it's super important. And so, for example, these are two examples of the same story. So this was during the Christchurch terrorist attack. And so I was covering this on the World account. And so previously, if, for example, you say, you look at the post on the left and you say, New Zealand's Prime Minister said she will never say the Christchurch terrorist's name, with a generic photo of Jacinda Ardern. And cool, that sounds fine. I read this and now I understand she's not going to say the Christchurch terrorist's name, but it's not actually really clear, where and when this photo was taken. And, this could be any photo of Jacinda. I don't really know what she's saying in this moment. It doesn't necessarily sort of connect with me. I'm just going to see it. I'm going to be like, okay, cool. But then, on the right, we take the actual video of her speaking about this, and then let's watch it, and then we'll be able to see the difference in impact.
The 15th of March will now be forever a day etched in our collective memories. On a quiet Friday afternoon, a man stormed into a place of peaceful worship and took away the lives of 50 people. That quiet Friday afternoon has become our darkest of days. He sought many things from his act of terror, but one was notoriety. And that is why you will never hear me mention his name. He is a terrorist, he is a criminal, he is an extremist, but he will, when I speak, be nameless. And to others I implore you, speak the names of those who were lost, rather than the name of the man who took them. He may have sought notoriety, but we in New Zealand will give him nothing, not even his name.
So as you can see here, it's a lot, we're showing her actually saying this, and it actually is a lot more powerful because, we can understand the reasoning behind why she is not going to say his name. We can feel the emotion, and it just creates a lot more of an impact. So this is just the most basic level of, say, if you have a video of this moment, just do it. Just show them doing it. If you have a video of someone actually doing this thing, do it instead of just, taking a screenshot or having a photo. This is just sort of a principle that sort of applies, that you can apply through everything. So if you're talking about something, instead of me telling you about this, me telling you that Jacinda said this, why don't I just show you Jacinda said this instead? It's just a lot more powerful, and it's a lot more personal, and people can actually, it sort of helps people not to have to like visualize and imagine what it is, because we're literally showing them the story. So the other thing that you want to do is you also want to focus on people, because, people relate to people, and it's really difficult for people to connect with or understand the gravity of like a news event when it doesn't directly affect or relate to you, especially if it's, somewhere happening halfway around the world in a small country that you've never heard of. So why should I care? Because, I'm living my life and I'm really happy. But if you're able to show someone who's been affected, because people are we are all sort of united with our emotions, and people are empathetic beings. So if they're able to see, somebody who's been affected or somebody who is sort of related to this, then they can say, oh yes, wow, like that creates sort of like an empathetic response where people are like, oh, okay, wow, a real human being is, behind this. And, that could be my uncle, that could be my sister. It could be, that person reminds me of my friend's mom. And so it's really, really important to always think about how you can sort of feature the people and highlight the people and the stories and their experiences behind these sort of news events that you are sort of telling stories about. And then you also want to focus on action and emotion, because people, as we sort of spoke about earlier, have really short attention spans now, and if we don't really necessarily sort of grip them immediately, they're probably going to keep scrolling. Especially like if your video doesn't start moving for like 5 seconds, people are probably going to think that it's just a photo. So we want to be able to you always want to open with a money shot. You want to be able to just like grip them immediately, and moving people the same way that it's like kids are drawn to like things that move and brightly colored. It's the same for people like things that are moving and that catches their attention. And here are just 2 examples of action and then also emotion.
They're going to have to look to take 2. They're going to have to take a chance now. Oh, dog. Oh, the dog has the ball. Oh, here we go. Now that
is brilliant.
Now there we go. Dog has stopped play.
Oh,
there we go. I think we'll retrieve the ball. It may need a clean. I think this has brought COVID regulations.
So as you can see, that really, really captures your attention because, there's so much movement, there's lots of action going on, and people are really, really into that. So you want to try and zone in on that wherever possible instead of sort of having statics and images that are slowly panning. You want to be able to focus on the action a lot. And then you want to be able to tap into the emotion the same way that we were speaking about for when we were focusing on people, because people are emotions are universal. And so here's a video that I made during the Tokyo Olympics, which is about the refugee athletes. And so, yeah, I'm just going to play it.
Much more collaboration and we like to make a commitment to support.
Eve cha bun này sao nó để bukini pil kan yoko ke buka kitoro bunda to yoko ka to ke dinga gini dia cha kai ko kiro ka te ron ko bada gima dilis ka ude ke jair ne kada lakin kai ne de golo wala sal na an ngadi ko bukani ngane mu aje cha goro ngai ka wicho kata go me ko ke nyangi tumo bu
Diaby, I wish in my prayer nyeko ke linganeta na posho cha bona and I'm so happy.
So as you can see, this is a little bit more of a less, I guess, overt sort of tapping into the emotions where, previously for the South Korean soldier, we were just sort of showing her emotions. But this is a way of sort of tapping into the emotions how inspirational they are, and then showing other people that they have been able to inspire. And then that sort of is able to sort of trigger I guess it makes you feel really happy when you watch this, you feel really inspired, and, it's heartwarming, for example. So you want to be able to try and tell these stories and think about the emotions that, it will sort of, I guess, have people feel and experience. And then you want to be able to experience it wherever possible. So if you have the opportunity to try something out when you're making a video, please do it. It's the same as show, don't tell. Instead of talking about something, why don't you actually show somebody doing it? And so here are just two examples of videos. When I was at BuzzFeed, we were trying out all these videos, the same way that we went and bought a brick. We went to South Korea to cover the Winter Olympics. And while we were there, we were like, oh, let's do a video about, plastic surgery in South Korea, because that's a really big deal. So we decided so one of my teammates, Rachel, decided that, we were going to do this video together. And so we went to, she went and got a South Korean plastic surgery consultation. And so she actually went through the whole experience where they x-rayed her head, and then they told her this is what's gonna, this is how we would change your face if you were to get plastic surgery. And so let's just watch this, and then we can talk a little bit more about this after this is actually a longer YouTube video, but I've just sort of cut the intro for you to see.
That is your phone.
This is so weird. That's my phone. That is so odd.
Yeah, but the problem is that your skin is a little bit, you have some fat here and here, so here and here.
So you can imagine how, if we had gone on this consultation and we had just filmed sort of, here's the empty x-ray, and then, we, see some x-rays that aren't, relatable. We don't know whose face they belong to, but here you can actually see it's so much more gripping when you actually watch her in the x-ray, and it's going around her head, and then you see her skull, and then they're adjusting it on the x-ray, and the doctor is sort of squeezing on her cheeks and saying this is where we would cut the fat. It's just a lot more appealing, and because people don't have to necessarily imagine, somebody in this x-ray, they can actually watch it and sort of live vicariously through them. And so if you always have the opportunity to do it, I would just encourage you to do it, or at least have somebody, do it and show it. And so the other one is me eating stinky tofu. So I was in Taiwan, and so one of Taiwan's most famous dishes is stinky tofu. And so, instead of just sort of making a video about, shooting some vendors, I decided to go and have some stinky tofu in a night market. So please enjoy.
All right, I'm gonna take my first bite. here near the entrance of Gongda Night Market, which is one of the most famous night markets in Taiwan. As you can see behind me, there are a lot of food stands. One of the most notorious dishes is stinky tofu. Stinky tofu gets its name from its stink, which is very distinct. Although some people feel that they can't stomach it, just think of it as the blue cheese in Taiwan. It comes with sour pickled vegetables on top and a bit of sauce, some soy sauce and some chili sauce. You put the vegetables in here. Grab a bit of this. Alright, I'm gonna take my first bite. It's delicious, like the sour pickled vegetables, they go really well with the tofu. What do you want to tell foreigners who don't know anything about stinky tofu? It's delicious and you should stop being a wuss and just try it.
So this is quite funny because it's almost like you feel like you're sort of, you're there with me and we're in this night market and you're watching me eat the stinky tofu and it sort of adds to that feel because it feels like you're following someone on their journey. So always experience it if possible. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about in terms of sort of good principles of good storytelling is to be conversational and authentic because a lot of the sort of, I guess it really depends on your platform. So for example, on Instagram and also on TikTok, people are very, very conversational. It's not very serious. People aren't really necessarily writing in sort of headline speak. So you want to be able to sort of make sure that your content sort of fits in and feels natural as part of the platform that it's on, because if people are scrolling along and they see something that doesn't feel like it fits and it's like too perfectly polished, for TikTok, for example, they're probably going to be like, oh, this is an ad, I'm gonna swipe by it. And so you want it to be sort of conversational in how you sort of present it. So like I always like to think of it as like, how would you sort of tell this story to your friend? And some people like to think of it as like, how would this be something that your neighbor would share, or how would you tell your neighbor so that she would share it, for example? And so you want to make sure that you are studying these platforms that you're going to put your sort of videos on, and then make sure that they fit into sort of the vibe of the platform, so to say. So for example, here are just two examples actually. The first one is a video for Instagram, and then so we've got the headline: someone in Australia found a sheep with 35 kilograms of fleece in the wild, and it's an absolute unit. And so here is the video.
Wow, I don't have to get a picture of the board out. You're beautiful. That's got to be another 20 right? Ballerina.
So, that's probably going to make you cackle a little bit. It might make you stop because, we're referencing a meme and stuff like that. And so, it feels like, it looks like it's a meme video that sort of fits in very nicely with all the different types of meme videos that are on Instagram. And then on the right, we have a TikTok that I made, which is basically sort of, if you sort of look at it in terms of the delivery and the words that I choose to use and how it is presented to the audience, it sounds very like, it's a friend talking to you. So let's just watch this.
Ukrainian airline has swapped women flight attendants' skirts and heels for pants and sneakers. After learning about complaints from women employees, SkyUp Airlines decided to reform its dress code to focus on both comfort and style. Women previously had to wear high heels, tight blouses, and pencil skirts, and flight attendants said that their feet were damaged from having to stand in heels for 12 hours every day. The uniform now consists of trouser suits by an Ukrainian brand and Nike Air Max 720 sneakers, which feature a high air cushion. A spokesperson said that times have changed and they wanted to create a new and more modern image of women flight attendants.
So yeah, and if you're thinking about sort of how people are consuming this content, they're most likely watching it on their phones. And so, when you're holding your phone and you're watching this, it almost feels like, it's very personal. It almost feels like, you're having a call, your FaceTime call with your friend, and she's telling you about the story. And so you want to be sort of as friendly and conversational as possible, but also at the same time, obviously there are some stories that are quite serious, but I think there are still definitely ways that you can sort of balance that where, you can still be, a person, a human being in how you sort of speak to and connect with other people, rather than just sort of, you headline speak and, authorities confirm multiple casualties kind of thing. You can definitely still sort of balance that, and so that you can make sure that people are actually sort of understanding and connecting with stories that may not necessarily be as connected to them, or maybe, halfway around the world. So we're going to quickly go through some introduction to social video formats. So these are just some of the ways that you can present social news videos, and we've already seen a lot of them. So I'm just going to rush through them quickly. So the first one is really, really simple. It's just a clip with text. And so here are just two examples.
For the Australians, but history in the making. She's just really Canadian.
So that's literally just, a 5-second clip with a headline on top that basically tells the story. And then you can have, more complicated versions of that where, here, for example, Egypt held a huge parade to open a 3,000-year-old avenue of sphinxes, and it was spectacular. Yeah, so as you can see, that's just a longer version of that, but this time it's involving more clips. And as if you've sort of been thinking about sort of telling a story, it actually sort of has a narrative. So it's the clips are put together in a way to feel like you're sort of on this journey. So from the beginning to the end, you're from the beginning, and then you're traveling along this, this parade, and then you're going into this other temple, and then at the end there is fireworks. And so you can sort of put video clips together in a way that sort of, tells the story. And then, if it's a clip that already makes sense by itself, then potentially you don't need the text. But, a lot of times you may need to have text to supplement and to sort of help viewers immediately understand from one glance what this video is about. Then you have text over video, which is a little bit more complicated because there's more storytelling involved, because there's text that then comes on. It's sort of the same way that you would think about like writing an article, for example, except you're sort of illustrating it with sort of visuals that go with it. So here are just two examples. The first one is from QuickTake, and then the second one is from Almost. And these are just sort of different ways that you can do sort of text over video treatments as well. And obviously there are lots of different ways. So this is sort of like, taking a listicle, for example, and then turning it into a video, which then has text sort of illustrating the list. And then you have the other type, which is sort of like telling a story.
туда-сюда проехала. А по снегу что же находишь-то? Когда вот туда проехала, посмотрела, нету. Туда проехала, смотрю, там у самой горы ходят, да? Ну вот, покричала того-сего, и все домой прутся. Вот и все. Что тут, дело? Почему нравится? Потому что душа просит. Байкал – это лучше всего. Это нетронутая, это девственная природа. Вот. Ничего я не могу сравнить. Ни с чем.
So this allows you, if you have text over video, this allows you to do more of a storytelling arc where you can sort of, guide the viewer through the story and tell them, more information about it, beyond just sort of having the text, the videos sort of clips together in a row. And then you have the hosted explainers, which is basically really, really good for breaking down really complex and sort of big topics that are very difficult to sort of visualize because, there's a lot of events going on, and it's also, difficult to sort of just tell it through sort of, your text over video. So here are just two examples of how you can sort of treat hosted explainers, which are also very similar to sort of the TikToks.
For weeks in a row, people in Sudan have been taken to the streets in violent and deadly protests, clashing with police, which has led to an estimated death toll of around 40 people. Videos show the military using weapons and beating unarmed civilians. Journalists, doctors and protest leaders have been dragged from their homes and the streets, and the government has shut down the internet. The protest started on December 19th in Atbara because of the tripling of the prices of bread. But they have now evolved into wider demonstrations against the regime of President Omar al-Bashir, who has ruled the country for 29 years. Activists say people now spend 40% of their income on bread because of inflation. People have described seeing hundreds of people lining up to get bread and medicine, sleeping in their cars as they wait for fuel, and being unable to withdraw their salaries from ATMs. This has angered citizens and led to discontent with Bashir and his inability to keep the country's economy afloat. Many are now calling for Bashir to resign. Political groups close to the government have asked Bashir to step down, but with much of the military and police loyal to him, an overthrow could be difficult. It would also not be an immediate fix to the country's pressing problems.
So this was actually this coup from previously, not the one that just happened. But as you can see, if you think about this, and so say we want to cover, bread price, the Sudan coup back then, if we just sort of use a photo and then we try to put some text on it, it's probably not enough for us to sort of go through all of the, all of the things that people are contemplating, all of the stuff that has happened, all of the historical context. And so this is a really good way to sort of help people, to guide people through the story, through having somebody as well to sort of talk them through it the same way that you would a friend. And so here is another example.
An honour killing is the murder of a person, usually a woman, who is seen to have violated traditional values. The murders are often committed by their nearest male relatives, brothers, uncles, fathers. The concept has been around for more than 2,000 years. The earliest known example of these murders are all linked to female sexuality. This is because honour killings are all about protecting the male concept of honour. The murders are predominantly motivated by women who have premarital sex or an affair, or even disobey their husbands or close male relatives. These murders can even occur after a woman's been raped, because then she's seen to have brought shame on her family or close male relatives. After honour killings, communities often try and pass off the deaths as the result of natural causes or accidents. Examples of honour killings can be found around the world, from Peru to China to Iraq, and the practice cuts across all religious lines. However, many of the cases that we hear about recently are in India or in Pakistan. A 2012 report from the UN put the official number of honour killings at 5,000, but in all likelihood the number is much, much higher.
So again, this is sort of quite a difficult, complex concept to sort of discuss. And then so if we're able to sort of illustrate it with different sort of examples and also evidence, and then, complement it with visuals, it really helps audiences to better understand this concept of an honor killing. And then we have vertical storytelling, which is, all the boom these days. And so here are just two examples. First is a TikTok that I made recently. And then the other one is an Instagram story that I made for Quick Take when I was covering the Taiwan elections in Taiwan. And I was basically asking the audience for questions that they had about the Taiwan elections. So I'll just play them quickly.
What are some questions you have about Taiwan's elections? You can ask me about Tsai, her policies, young people's role in the election, and what this means for Taiwan and its relation to the rest of the world. Just leave a question down below and I'll get back to you.
So what's cool about sort of vertical storytelling is that, you know, these platforms such as Instagram and also TikTok, they offer a lot of sort of different functionalities and features that allow you to really like engage with your audience. And so, for example, this was, you know, an Instagram story where, you know, we got hundreds of responses from people asking questions about Taiwan and her policies and what this means for Taiwan-China relations, for example. And then we are able to then engage with those questions and then answer them in another video, which series, which actually you can find on my Instagram. And then on TikTok, again, you also have those different features where, you know, you can reply to comments, you can duet with other people, you can, you know, sort of tell stories as well in a vertical format that feels a little bit more, I guess, lo-fi versus sort of very highly produced. So here is an example.
This woman in Poland died after she was denied an abortion and people are protesting. 30-year-old Isabella had been 22 weeks pregnant when she was taken to the hospital. However, doctors did not perform an abortion even though her fetus lacked amniotic fluid, which can cause abnormalities in the womb. And medical staff had instead told her that she would only be treated after the fetus died. Isabella died of septic shock on September 22nd. Last year, Poland outlawed abortion for fetal abnormalities, banning abortion for almost all cases. And activists say Isabella is the first person to die as a result of the new law.
So yeah, this is again sort of very similar to like an explainer, but, you know, we've done it on TikTok with a green screen behind me, and then it's sort of like, you know, people telling a story again. And then you finally have sort of mini documentaries. These are more for like YouTube, which are very highly produced. And, you know, people go to YouTube and they want to watch, you know, a super highly polished video, you know, documentary telling me, you know, about, you know, the history of, I don't know, Japan, for example. So this is the beginning of a video that I shot while I went to Japan and where I interviewed the last girls of the Ganguro subculture.
So we're in the back of a taxi in Tokyo on the way to Shibuya, which is the capital of Ganguro culture.
Oh, we don't have to watch the whole video. It's quite long. I thought I chopped it. But anyway, you can watch the whole video on YouTube, but essentially you sort of can go into a lot more detail for stuff like this. And usually most of the time they're horizontal, but this is just another type of storytelling and video storytelling that you can do. And obviously there are way more different types, but these are just sort of some of the main categories that are sort of out there. So now that we've learned all about social news videos and all the principles and all the different types of formats, you want to make your own videos. So let's go through that very quickly. Sort of this is very like basic level, but you know, it's very, very interesting and fun. So first of all, you're going to be worried about your setup. And most of the time people will ask me, you know, does my setup need to look as intense as what you have going on there on the left side? And the answer is no. It can be literally as simple as what I have going on the right side, which is me standing at on the back of a truck at Pride last year for Amnesty International, and I literally just have my old iPhone SE, which is still, you know, the tiny one, and that is all I did to film videos on that day. So all that goes to say, in terms of equipment, all you really need is your phone. Something that can film at 1080p at 30 FPS. And you can check that in the settings of your phone. Usually that, I think like an iPhone 5S is fine. I was been using my iPhone, my tiny iPhone SE for, you know, I used it for like 5 years until I recently got a new one because it was dying. But I shot a bunch of videos on that. But if you're looking for something a little bit more sort of next level, you want to use a camera. A lot of people recommend the Canon 70D. And then other things that can help you when you're out are earphones. So even like AirPods are fine, just because, you know, if you're in places where there's a lot of background noise and you're trying to sort of speak, it's really difficult to sort of capture the audio. And then you can also, if you're sort of interviewing someone or something, you can use another phone to use the voice memo, just so you can have a bit of like a clearer sort of sound in terms of audio. And then especially if you're going outside at night, or if you're indoors and there's not, just basically in low lighting situations, you want to make sure that you have another light source. This can be, you know, you can buy some fancy LED lights, you can get them off Amazon, you can get like a ring light if you're filming at home, or, you know, if you're really, you know, you're really stuck, you can use your phone, another phone's flashlight, and that would totally be fine. Just hold it up above, and, you know, that will help you to just get footage that isn't as dark. Although most phones now have really great night modes, but but it's always good to just have it just in case, you know, you're in a situation and you really need lighting. And then also a selfie stick. So in general, you know, people are cool with holding their phones, but it gets very tiring if you're filming a protest for, you know, an hour. Your arm is probably going to get tired from holding your phone like this. So having a selfie stick really helps. It helps you to go up in like high angles, and it just helps to stabilize it a little bit. And so, yeah, you can literally go out with your phone and just start experimenting and shooting a bunch of videos. So once you've, you know, now we've set all the equipment, this is sort of the process that you should really think about when you're sort of trying to make a social news video. So we will go through each of them sort of in detail. So the first thing you want to do is script. So basically come up with the idea of your video and sort of like structure it and lay it out. Then you want to film. So that might be, you know, you're, you know, hosting something, for example. So you might want to film yourself, or you're filming someone, or you're going somewhere and you're filming all of this stuff. And then you want to gather B-roll, which we'll talk a little bit more about, but it's essentially like different, all the other footage that you use, all the complementary footage that you will use to complement your video. And then you want to edit and put it all together. So let's go through each of these things. So the first thing is when you're scripting, you want to make sure that you, first of all, like it doesn't necessarily have to be a super, you know, 100% scripted sort of thing, but you should have at least a rough idea of the structure of your video before you go out and film it, because and we'll talk a little bit more about why in a little bit, which is related to the B-roll. But basically you want to have an idea of like, even if it's just like bullet points, to be like, okay, I want to start with this, then I'm going to have this, and I'm going to have an interview. Then I'm going to also focus on this, or just at least have sort of an idea of how your video is going to look, because this will help guide you in your process when you're out on the field filming something. So when you're scripting, you want to follow the inverted pyramid, which I'm sure a lot of journalists already know, but we want to lead with the most newsworthy information. So the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So because people are on their phones these days and people are scrolling and there's lots of information, they're on the move, they don't have the attention span, we need to tell them immediately what the story is, because people are just going to scroll by. If you take too long to get to the point, they're not going to watch your video. So basically lead with the most newsworthy information and immediately explain to them, like, this is what the video is about. You want to open with a money shot and be like, this is what the video is about. This is why you should watch it. And, you know, stats have shown that, you know, if you are able to capture them in the first 4 to 7 seconds, then they're more likely to watch the video. So you want to make sure that you get all the good stuff at the front so that they understand what this video is going to be about, because they don't want to, people don't like to, you know, waste time on watching something to find out that they don't like it. So you want to tell them immediately. We don't want to trick them. We just say, this is what the video is about. This is why you should watch it. And they'll say, okay, cool. Yeah, I want to watch it. Or no, I don't want to watch it. I'm not going to waste my time. And then you can sort of pad it out with more details and general information about the event. And then, you know, you can go into like the other background information, because if you just think about how people consume videos, people are probably not going to watch your entire video to the end. So you want to make sure that, you know, wherever, you know, maybe it's like 5 seconds they stop watching your video, 20 seconds they stop watching your video, 60 seconds they stop watching your video, that they, wherever they stop, they can still have an understanding of your video, regardless of what time they've stopped. And so, you know, you should, you know, someone who's stopped at 10 seconds should still be able to tell you what this video is about, versus, and the same way that someone at 60 seconds can also tell you the same thing. So when you're scripting first, you want to think in terms of the less text you have, the better, because again, we've spoken about how people are really visual. And so if you can try and simplify it as much as possible, then it's easier for people, because people immediately turn off when they see like a wall of text, and then they're going to be like, oh, I don't want to read that. It's really like, ugh, I have to use my brain. And so if you can, if you can use a photo to tell that story, use the photo to tell that story. And then you can sort of think of each bullet point as you're sort of structuring and scripting it out as sort of like a scene, as sort of, each point or a slide as sort of like a bullet point or a paragraph, which is like a point essentially. And we can sort of watch that in the TikTok video that's on there, and then also on the IGTV video. But then you also want to try and write in short, simple conversational sentences, just because people, again, don't have like great attention spans or memories these days. So if you write in like a super long sentence and it takes a long time to get to the point, by the time you've gotten to the point, a lot of people have already forgotten what you said, I don't know, 5 seconds ago. So you want to get to the point as quickly as possible in as few words as possible. And then, yeah, again, just sort of think about how you would tell a story to a friend in terms of like the structure. So you might start off with this way, then you might add this information, because people are natural storytellers, and the way that we sort of structure it in our brain is just sort of how people sort of connect with stories. So you can really sort of, it's quite instinct, you can sort of rely on your instincts a lot and sort of just be like, if I were telling this to, I don't know, my friend, how would I sort of structure this, and how would I say it? What kind of words would I use? And then you can just sort of replicate that. And obviously, it might be, you might need to make it a little bit more formal, but you can sort of rely on that to sort of guide your scripting process. And so here are just 2 examples. The first one is a TikTok, which, I scripted it as like bullet points. And then, I then set those bullet points.
Japan's top medical university has been decreasing the test scores of female applicants so that they can keep a low ratio of women in the university. The university believed it was better to accept more male students than female students because female doctors would end up dropping out of the workforce after getting married or giving birth to children. They believed that more male doctors would solve their doctor shortage in their hospitals. A university official reportedly called it a necessary evil, and it is causing outrage. 303 men and 148 women passed the first stage of applications, but they ended up accepting only 30 women compared to 141 men. The university automatically deducted a set number of points from interview scores of female applicants. Japan has a history of gender inequality, and male candidates are often picked over female candidates. Only 12.4% of legislators, senior officials, and managers in Japan are female. People are mad because first, it is 2018, and second, it's not the women's fault that they may have to leave their work, but because of the system that doesn't support them enough.
So I meant to play the other one first, but the order got mixed up. But anyway, this is, if you sort of think about this video, it's sort of how it's been structured, and also the way that it's delivered. It's very sort of conversational. It's very simple. It's very straight to the point sort of thing. So that was actually a video made for IGTV, which is a little bit longer. And then on the left here, we have the TikTok video that I was trying to play.
A court in China has rejected this woman's historic Me Too case against a famous TV presenter. Zhou Xiaoxuan, a 28-year-old screenwriter, said she was sexually harassed by a famous presenter when she was an intern. Zhou, known as Xianzi in China, said in 2018 that Zhu Jun, a 57-year-old anchor at state broadcaster CCTV, groped and forcibly kissed her in a dressing room when she was 21. Her post went viral and she quickly became a symbol of hope for young women in China. Zhu denied the allegations and sued her for defamation. She then countersued him, demanding a public apology and financial compensation. November 14th, the court in Beijing rejected Zhou's case, saying she had provided insufficient evidence. Zhou said the judges didn't give her much of an opportunity to detail her allegations and that she will appeal.
就算是可能这个案子最后没有取得最终的司法意义上的胜利，但是能够让很多人看到除了和我一样的性别暴力的受害者，就已经是一种胜利了。
Right. So as you can see, it's scripted in sort of very short sentences as much as possible, and then sort of said very, very like straight to the point, and then in a way that sort of makes sense in terms of what we were talking about in terms of the inverted pyramid. Cool. So when you're filming yourself and others, here are just some tips. So so we've done our scripting, and now we're on to the second step, which is filming. So the most important thing is you want to go somewhere bright and quiet. So natural light is great. Where possible, outside is good, but just make sure it's not too loud. But if you're inside as well, just make sure that, you are facing the light and don't have the light behind you, because that will probably be backlit and that will be really difficult to sort of fix. So yeah, try and go somewhere bright, and then try and have somewhere quiet, because, you want to minimize the amount of background noise where possible. Obviously there are situations where, you're going to be at a protest scene, there's going to be a lot of noise going on, but that's why we were saying, have earphones with you if you need it. If you are sort of next level, then you also want some microphones with you, if that's the case. Anyway, if you're using your phone, as we've sort of spoken about, you want to hold your phone at eye level. You don't really want to go up too high, so because this way people can't actually see your eyes, and if you have a fringe especially. And then if it's too low, then you don't want to have like a double chin. So you want to hold it at eye level. You can use a ring light, you can use a selfie stick, you can use a stand, anything like that. Just make sure that you also don't zoom in too close, because you want to leave room around you so that you can add text and stuff if you need to, or stickers. And it's always easier to sort of zoom in, crop in, than be too zoomed in that you're like, oh, I want to zoom out, but it's not possible because this is the type that like I've already cropped my frame like this, I can't go this way. So it's always better to just make sure that you leave enough room sort of all around you, or the people that you are filming, so that if you need to, you can add stuff, you can shift to the right, you can shift to the left, you can shift up, shift down, kind of thing. And then if it's really echoey, like if you're in a room that has a lot of noise as well, just use headphones. AirPods are good as well. So here are just two examples of, this is like on the left here is, filmed with in front of a window, natural light, handheld phone here.
Ramadan is the 9th month in the Islamic calendar, and it's an important month for Muslims as we believe that the Quran, our holy book, was revealed in Ramadan.
So that was a Q&A during the month of Ramadan that we did on the World account. And then here is a TikTok that we filmed for Amnesty. This is without the text. I've removed the text of it so that you can just sort of see sort of the framing. So this was filmed by somebody else who was filming me, but we made sure that we sort of left enough room for everything. The audio isn't actually too great on this. We should have used headphones, but you just want to sort of think about the framing of it so that you make sure that you leave enough space for all the other stuff that needs to go on it, or if you need to zoom in and out.
Coronavirus is not an excuse for racism. Nothing is. Discrimination can be disguised as jokes or political opinion. Don't let that happen. Be open and listen to people who have experienced racism. This can build understanding and support. It's vital to speak out when it feels safe. Call it out. Mind your language. Words can obscure people's humanity and fuel stereotypes. Say what you're for. We're for a world where we can live freely and without fear. It's up to us to make that happen.
So as you can see, it's quite like a comfortable shot. There's enough space. I'm not pushing up too close against the sides. I'm also not too far away that you can't see me. Especially, you got to think about how people are sort of seeing this on their phones. So when you're interviewing people, it's also very sort of, if you're filming other people, what you ask is super important. First of all, you want to get a comfortable mid-length shot. So like, the one that we have over here, sort of how I've sort of framed myself in my Zoom clip, and then also in the square video there. And then you want to, the questions that you ask are super important. And so you want to ask them to tell the whole story. So because, we want to be able to have aspects of it later on. So, if, for example, you are missing this chunk and you don't have anything to fill it in, and this is a crucial part of the story, but you don't have any clips or anything, you can use that chunk for the story. And, it's just better to have it because you can take bits from it if you need to. And also asking them to tell their story in their own words is, sometimes they say it in a way that, you would not have been able to articulate as well. And you probably want to use that bit in your video. Then you want to ask them to react to their circumstances because, again, people are really driven by emotion and people want to know how people feel about something. So you want to say, like, how did that make you feel? Because, people, this is what sort of video allows you to sort of capture that emotion that they feel. And then you also want to ask them for concrete details, for example, like why do you think that happened? Because people on social media, so social media audiences are very driven by they want to understand why something works or why something is the way that is. And then having somebody explain that to them is really, really helpful for them to understand sort of the topic and the issue at hand. And so here's a video that I made for Quick Take when I was doing the elections in Taiwan, covering the elections in Taiwan. And basically, I went and interviewed a bunch of young people and asked them who they were voting for and why they were voting for this person, and what sort of focusing on, telling, having them sort of react to the circumstances and, why they were doing what they were doing, sort of their motivations behind it.
台湾是需要被重视，台湾不能成为下一个香港。
觉得自己可以生在台湾蛮开心的，因为我们可以参与到投票这件事是得来不易的。因为毕竟在亚洲，像我们旁边的那个国家，光香港这件事情就让我们觉得感到恐慌，也害怕自己的未来会发生这些事情。
People will say that Taiwan is a democracy tower in East Asia, and I do believe so. And to see Hong Kong happen, it's really, really important to us to vote for our future. And I really hope that Taiwan could keep the democracy, because we don't want to be Chinese.
大家说今日香港，明日台湾，就是会担心说会不会之后台湾，如果他们两个某一个当选的话，是说台湾之后也会跟香港发生一样的事情。
Yeah, so as you can see, they've sort of spoken about their motivations, they've spoken about their feelings, and this is what sort of makes people sort of understand the why, because, you know, you want to know why they did it. You want to know why they voted for Tsai Ing-wen, for example. And then this is on the right here, we have a clip from when I was running the World account, and during International Women's Day, I partnered with Instagram, and we basically interviewed a bunch of women who are doing really cool things around the world, and then asked them to film some videos for us, sort of to tell their stories and about what they do. And so basically we've asked them for these questions, which helps to sort of tell their story and then sort of reacting to their circumstances. So she's able, this photographer in Iran has been able to really sort of capture that in her response.
پریسا بوتاهریان هستم، عکاس ورزشی ایرانی. توی ایران برای عکاسی از فوتبال مشکلاتی برای زنان وجود داره. ما باید برای رسیدن به هدفی که دوستش داریم تلاش کنیم. منم برای رسیدن به چیزی که قلبا حس می‌کنم درسته تمام تلاشمو می‌کنم تا بالاخره این رو برای ما هم باز.
Yeah, so as you can see, she's, you know, talking about her story in her own words and talking about, you know, reacting to her circumstances and why she thinks that is. So you want to sort of try and get these sort of, if you're able to get these sort of sound bites for your videos, you want to definitely like include them. Cool. So then after you've filmed all of the important footage, all the people that you want to interview, the next thing you want to do is gather B-roll. And so B-roll is basically video that you use to complement your main video. So this is basically a video, you want to get video of everything that you are referencing. So for example, you want the establishing shot of where you are. So, you know, if you're on the street, get a shot of the street. If you're going into a building, get a shot of the building. And then you want to have, you know, any objects that you're talking about, you want to do like some slow pans, not too fast, because if you pan really quickly, it's only like 2 seconds, and then maybe you need it for 10 seconds, but then you try to slow it down and it's like super wobbly. So just hold it for, you know, hold your phone or your camera at an object for like, I don't know, 10 seconds, which can feel like a lifetime because you're just like, I can't believe I'm just standing here waiting. But you will, you know, you will thank yourself later for that, because, you know, when you're running out of B-roll and you're like, oh no, I don't have enough footage, you'll be like, thank goodness I, you know, filmed this thing for 10 seconds. Now I can use this 10-second clip to fill up the time. And then, yeah, so any objects that you talk about, you want to do some slow pans, and then you can also zoom in or zoom out. And then you also want a nice close-up, just so that, you know, when you're illustrating it. Basically, we want to get footage of stuff we reference so that when we're talking about it, instead of just us talking about it, we can actually show the thing. And then you also want to get your subject not talking. So if you're interviewing someone, you want to just get some shots of them in their natural environment, whether it's like, you know, you're walking together, then get some shots of you guys walking together. You know, maybe some shots of, people really like to get shots of their hands, or maybe another shot of them from behind, just having them interact with their environment and their atmosphere so that we can sort of see them beyond just sort of the clip of them sitting here, you know, answering your questions very upright, because you want to be able to sort of paint a holistic picture of this person that you are sort of interviewing and, you know, you're featuring, for example. And then, you know, you can also get some shots of you as well. Like if you are on this adventure, you can say, you know, you can get some shots of you as if you have someone else with you, or you can even do some selfie style stuff and be like, hey, I'm Kassy. I'm just on my way to go and interview these people in Tokyo. And so I'm really excited about this. And then here's me walking into a building. You just never know, like, when you will be able to, if you need to use these shots. But, you know, the more footage you have of all the things that you're encountering and referencing, the better, because the last thing you want is not enough B-roll, so that all you end up is a 5-minute clip of somebody talking about their story with nothing to sort of illustrate. So you want to sort of think about B-roll as sort of like the evidence of the thing that you are talking about, and the show bit of it. And so here's just like an example, going back to our sort of video from earlier. You can see, like, you know, these are all the things that this encompasses a lot of the shots that I've just sort of spoken about. So here we have an establishing shot of, you know, here we are in Japan. Here's some shots of me. There were some shots of our subjects not talking. Here they are not talking. You know, she's playing with her hair. She's not talking because, you know, we don't want to mute her, for example. Yeah. And
so
then,
we're in the back of the taxi in Tokyo
talking,
on the way to Shibuya, which is the capital of Gangaro culture.
As I'm talking about Shibuya comes up, if that sort of makes sense. And so if I were to suddenly reference this tree, for example, then I probably want to have a close-up of this tree as I'm talking about this tree, so that people can see the details on it, for example. Great. And then we have the final part, which is, you know, we have scripted our video, we have filmed all of the people, and now we have to put it together, which is editing. Basically, we have gathered all of the information and all of our materials, and now we can put it into finally our own video. And so here are just two examples of videos that you can sort of edit on your phone. And I think editing can be, very complex. A lot of people sort of associate it with, like proper big computers and stuff. But I think as we sort of move more towards like TikToks and Instagram Reels, you can actually do a lot with just your phone and apps on your phone, for example. So this here is a video that I made for Amnesty, which I used only my phone to create. And then the other one is a video of Greta that I sort of used for International Women's Day with the partnership that I spoke about, where, I used a little bit more than just use my phone. I also had to use my computer to subtitle it, but I'll just show you sort of the difference. So that was shot entirely just on my phone. And then I used the green screen, and then I sort of put it together and then added some text to it. So as you can see, there's quite a lot you can actually do just using your phone. And then here is the other video, which, for the subtitles, I've actually added on the computer, but then the rest of it, I've sort of used my phone to put it together.
For me, International Women's Day means that we remember our history and the struggle of women, and also that we acknowledge the fact that nowhere in the world today women are equal to men, and that we still have a long way to equality.
Right, so that's, as you can see, a combination of different editing tools. So yes, editing. The first thing that I want to mention is you must always subtitle. It's best practice to do so, because if you think about, how people are consuming content, a lot of times people are looking at content on their phones. They may be commuting. It's probably not necessarily convenient to always have the sound on. And if people are sort of speaking, then people want to be able to know what's going on. So it's also very good for just accessibility reasons. So you want to make sure that you have subtitles. And, if you don't have a computer to do that, oh, my AirPods are dying. Hopefully I can last till the end of this. But if you don't have the computer to necessarily subtitle things and time them as they come on, it doesn't necessarily matter. You can sort of just make sure that you have like the bullet points, or have something that on the screen that allows people to understand what is being said and what is happening. And so as you can see on the right there, this is the Q&A from earlier from the Taiwan elections, where, I asked people for questions about the Taiwan elections, and then I answered them. And so I'm going to answer, I'll show this in a bit, but once I answer the question, I've actually just sort of, instead of subtitling it for the text to come on as I speak, it's just sort of bullet points of the main points that I'm speaking about. And then so when you're editing, the main thing to also think about is to make sure that the visuals match the text. So, if you're talking about a specific thing, show that specific thing. Just don't sort of think about like the visual as the evidence, as we sort of spoke about, to sort of the illustration of what you are saying, the visual example of what you are saying, instead of sort of having something random show up when the text is talking about something else. That if you have text talking about apples, but then you show a photo of oranges, that kind of doesn't really make sense for people. People are going to be sort of confused by the conflicting visual information that they are sort of being represented, or they're presented with. So when you're editing on mobile, what you can do is you can obviously use Instagram and TikTok's built-in tools to sort of edit stuff. So now it's very easy to just upload clips and then combine them and add text and time it out. And you can use other apps. So for example, CapCut is pretty good, and I think it's free. So you can use all these other tools to sort of, you can even use them to subtitle things. And then you can sort of play around with GIFs and colors and add a bunch of stuff around so that, makes your video pop a little bit more. And then if you're on desktop, obviously you've got Adobe Premiere Pro, and then you also have Final Cut Pro. I don't know if Premiere has Pro actually, if it's Pro. But anyway, these do cost money, but there are also very good options online that are free. So if you want to do a little bit more of an advanced edit on your computer, capwing.com is a free video editing tool online that is really good actually, and you can just upload your clips. It's free. You do it in your Chrome or Safari browser, and then you can just you can make your video there, and then you can download it, and then you can post it on social media. So I'm just going to quickly play these videos, and then we're coming to the end of the presentation. But so for the Square video, just sort of pay attention to sort of how the visuals and the text sort of complement each other. And then for the Instagram story, just sort of think about, sort of subtitling and capturing the essence of what is being said.
وايد أحب السيارات وأنواعها وتفاصيلها، لكن أحب سيارات السرعة، سيارات اللاكتشري، السيارات اللي هي حتى العادية تسنن اللاكتشري وايد أحبها. بس بالنسبة للوضع هذا أنا جدا مستمتعة فيه، لأن أنا على رأس شغلي والشغل هذا لي أنا أنتمي له، فأحس إن I'm proud of myself.
Cool. And then the final video, which is basically just to illustrate the importance of subtitling.
57% of people in Taiwan aged between 20 and 29 said they would vote for Tsai, according to opinion polls. Some young people that Bloomberg Quick Take spoke to said they voted for her because they wanted to preserve Taiwan's democracy and didn't want it to fall under China's control like Hong Kong.
Great. And so, yeah, as you can see, don't forget to subtitle. And then that is the end of the presentation. Thank you so much. I am open to questions, even though I think my AirPods might die. So I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen.
Wow, Kassy, take a breath. That's been an incredible tour of video storytelling, principles, practice. No, that's been phenomenal. Let me just share, go back to the little holding slide for a moment. So we've got a ton of questions, Kassy, which is great, and some lovely comments and feedback as well, just about how much people have appreciated today's presentation. So thank you for that, Kassy. So now I know you've touched on some of this, but I think people maybe just want a little bit more detail on some of it. So Catherine's asking about formats and sizes. What suits squares, horizontal, vertical. I mean, any sort of rule of thumb in terms of choosing the right shape and size of our video?
Yeah, definitely. I think it really depends on your platform. So for example, if you're on YouTube, most of the time it's horizontal, obviously, because people are sort of watching it almost as like a movie sort of thing, or like a mini documentary. Although YouTube now has like shorts, which is, there's sort of like vertical storytelling sort of offering. But most of the time on most of the other social media platforms, square is a good sort of rule of thumb, because if you sort of think about it, square takes up more space when you're scrolling on your phone versus horizontal. And it also is just you want to basically occupy as much of the scrolling space as possible. So square is usually better because people are not going to turn their phones this way if they're just scrolling along to watch a video, and they don't want to like zoom in on their phone. So at least sort of make it a little bit bigger for them. Just really think about how people consume content on their phones, and so that's why sort of vertical video is also really good, because it takes up a lot of space. And so you can do sort of 1080 and 10 by 1080 for square, and then you can do also sort of a variation of that where it's sort of a 4:5 ratio, where it's 1080 times 1350, or you have the 1080 times 1920, which is the full length of like a TikTok video. But in general, I would say, unless it's like a mini documentary or a documentary for YouTube, then or like a proper sort of news show, I would say like go with square. If you want to make a vertical version and you have the capacity, go ahead.
So, I mean, do you ever create a video and then repurpose it, or are you always thinking about the platform that you're making it for and creating something dedicated for that platform, Kassy?
Yeah, actually, I do a lot. I repurpose videos all the time, and I used to do it a lot at BuzzFeed. We'd go out and we shoot a live stream, then we'd like cut that into like a social news video, which is a square. Then we'd also cut that into like I don't know, like a vertical thing, and then we'd also cut that into like a long video with horizontal stuff. So usually it's a good idea if you're filming to actually film in horizontal, just because it gives you more space. Again, as we were talking about, where you're zoomed in, like if you've only got this much to sort of play with, and you have to make it a horizontal crop, it's going to be really tight on your face, for example. But if you shoot horizontally, it's easier to crop vertically. So in general, I would encourage people to shoot horizontally on their phones, unless they're sure that it's only going to be on TikTok or only going to be on Reels. Because if you shoot horizontally, you have more options to sort of move people around, move things around, crop into sort of the different ratios.
Ah, brilliant. Thank you. I think that answers Michelle's question too. Sarah and Peter have a couple of questions about rights and about copyright, Kassy. So when you are sourcing music for your videos, how do you find music? I mean, do you look for royalty-free music mostly? And then secondly, we noticed that on some of those videos there were video clips that we think probably you had taken from elsewhere. What do we do about just seeking permission to do that?
Right. So for music, usually there are obviously like paid royalty-free websites that some news organizations have, and so BuzzFeed and Bloomberg had one, so we would just sort of rely on that. But there are also still a lot of sort of royalty-free music that is available on just online, and you can look them up, and usually most of the time they just sort of ask that you credit them, which is really nice. There's a few options. I'm happy to sort of drop them in the chat later on. And then there's also, on TikTok, it's a little bit more blurry because, sometimes you want to be able to sort of jump in on it like a trend and use the sound. But usually it's just, there's also royalty-free music on TikTok as well. And so most of the time I default to the royalty-free music. There's always like sort of fair use where it's like, if you can't, this also applies to, UGC with the user generated content videos that we're talking about, where, if you're able to sort of make a strong fair use argument where, you cannot tell the story without this piece of music or this piece of video, then potentially you can, take a snippet from it, not like the entire thing, not sort of like the main bit of it. But this is sort of like, it's sort of like by case basis. And a lot of times if you're not sure, it's always just better to ask for permission. And this applies for video as well. So in terms of videos, like user generated content, most of the time it's okay to take from, politicians or like celebrities, sort of public figures that have openly sort of posted their own content on their social media platforms with the purpose of, getting people to see it. But if it's say like, usually we would say like, it's okay if you want to take like a selfie from like a celebrity if they filmed it themselves. But for example, if it's like a photo shoot for Vogue, for example, the photographer for Vogue has the rights to that image, so you'll probably have to reach out for permission. And then, for individuals, you always want to reach out for permission, because, even if they shared it publicly, you should just always reach out and say, hey, like, I'd love to share this video. Can I please use this video and I'll credit you, kind of thing. Obviously, if you're not really sure, it's always better to err on the side of caution and just make sure that you reach out for permission or figure out another way to sort of do it if you can't hear back from them. And then, there are also like services out there that you can pay for who sort of do this for you, like Newsflare and stuff like that. And like, I think it's like Story Hunter or something where people, maybe it's not Story Hunter, but people basically, they just Storyful, they reach out and then they help you to like, they get the user generated content, but you sort of have to pay for that. But it's always just better to have it sort of written down in terms of, for individuals in general.
Yeah, and just on that, Catherine has a kind of follow-up question, because I think she had been to another presentation you'd given, Kassy, where you had suggested contacting people by DM privately rather than tweeting them or whatever publicly, and she's wondering why do you suggest you do that?
Yeah, just because in general. First of all, if someone's going viral, for example, on Twitter, their comments are completely flooded. So they're probably not going to be looking there. Even if you're verified, they're probably getting like, I don't know, Chrissy Teigen's retweeting them or something. They're probably not going to be able to like see that. And then the other thing is just to sort of protect yourself as well, because sometimes, you know, there's a lot of trolls out there on the internet. And so if, for example, you go and comment underneath like a photo and you say, hey, I work for, I don't know, Almost, I want to, you know, can I use your photo? Then, you know, some people, there's always going to be people who are going to be like, oh, look, another journalist trying to get in for free, you know, you should pay or whatever. And then people, and then, you know, depending on the reputation of your news outlet, people may start trolling you. And then, you know, it just ends up being sort of very, very difficult. And so you just want to try and also it just helps you to sort of like reach them a little bit, I guess, like privately, because I always shoot them a DM like separately, privately. And then I also, if possible, try to reach them on other platforms, because if they're blowing up on Twitter, they're probably going to miss it on Twitter. So if I can hunt them down on Facebook, if I can find their email, then I'm probably going to have a better chance of them actually seeing my message and actually responding to it in general.
That's great advice. Thank you, Kassy. A couple of questions from Andrew here. With subtitles, with the text, most of the time, are you making those from scratch, or do you have templates? Do news organizations, do they have graphics teams that create, you know, branded styles and style sheets, or are you pretty much doing it bespoke each time?
So it depends on sort of where you're working. So, you know, for a lot of news organizations, they already have sort of like graphic designers and also like, you know, designers in general and people who have made special templates that you can then just sort of plug it into your, you install them on your computer and then you plug it into your Premiere or your Final Cut, or they have like a style guide where it's like, okay, these are the colors that we use, for example, on TikTok. This is the font style that we use on TikTok. Obviously on TikTok, you can't really have templates because it's, you know, you're playing on your phone each time. So it's kind of difficult to sort of make it uniform each time. But for a lot of like the stuff that you produce on the computers, most organizations will have that because, you know, they have the resources to sort of make these things. But, you know, you can also create your own sort of templates. But basically, I just copy the same sort of style each time. And I just make sure that the alignment is the same. The size is the same, and I just try not to touch it. So yeah, I think it's really up to you. And like, it's obviously quicker if you have something that you can just do at each time instead of trying to customize it each time, because it just is really time consuming otherwise.
Well, and just on that time issue, Kassy, Andrew's second question is, I mean, how long should we, I mean, once we've practiced these making these videos, I mean, how long do you take to actually put together some of these? I mean, what's a typical time? I know they'll all vary in time, but roughly, what sort of, how long should we be devoting to creating these videos?
I think, yeah, again, it really, really varies. Sometimes, you know, it takes me, I don't know, 3 to 4 hours to make like, I don't know, a 1-minute video. And then sometimes it takes me like 2 days because I'm really stuck. And it also depends on sort of like the level of in terms of editing, like, you know, sometimes, you know, you have to sort through, like, depending on how much footage you have. If you have like 40 minutes of like interview footage, it's probably going to take you a long time to sort through that. And then, you know, you might want to move stuff around and stuff like that. So I think it really depends, but I would say like it really is something that does take time, and you do have to sort of really focus on it. It's not, for me anyway, when I'm editing a video, I'm just like in the zone and I will not forget about the time. And then if you try to talk to me about something, I will forget about it immediately, kind of thing, because it's really, you know, you're sort of using a lot of, you know, you're using a lot of your senses basically to try to put this together. And so I think it's definitely something that would maybe a day for like short videos. But I think like the more you do it and the more you sort of build out a process that works for you, the quicker it can sort of get. So like TikTok videos, you might be able to do, previously it would take me ages because, you know, I'd be like filming and I'd be like getting all my lines wrong, and then, you know, I'd have to do it again, or you know, I'd mess up one thing, then I have to redo it. But I think like the more you do it, I can do it pretty quickly now because I've done it for about like a year now, versus like previously when I first started, it would take me like a whole day just to like make sure that everything was perfect to the stage where I could like actually post it, kind of thing. Sorry, I know that's not a very sort of concrete answer.
No, that helps. That gives us some context. Couple of technical questions about frame rates. Vaby is saying she has her phone set on 4K at 60 frames per second. Is that too much for these videos? Are there any disadvantages from setting it at that rate?
No, I think it really actually is more dependent on your computer's processing capacity, because if you have a 4K video, most of the time my own computer can't handle it. So it's going to take me like, I don't know, 24 days in order. It's going to like reload for like 1 hour each time that I try to edit it. So I don't think it's really up to you, because if you're shooting something for YouTube, for example, then maybe you want it to be like super high quality and like super highly polished product. But I think for like for Instagram and TikTok, it doesn't necessarily need to be that high quality. The main thing is like you will be stuck waiting for it to render. So it depends on, how quickly you want to be able to turn something out, and how sort of polished and like how detailed you want people to be, where you sort of, it depends on your audience, I guess. It's like, where do you expect them to be watching it? Are they going to be watching it on their TV? If so, then yeah, 4K is like, that's great for that.
Okay, thank you, Kassy. And then a linked question, Harris is saying, are you suggesting 30 FPS for everyone, or should UK video journalists stick with 25 as we are a PAL region?
I have no idea, actually. I don't actually know the technicalities of this. I'm really sorry. I'm just like, this is what I've been told, so I've just been doing it this way, and it's worked for me. I'm sure somebody with a bit more, I can ask and find out from my UK journalist friends sort of what FPS they use. This was sort of the stuff that we were using, and it was fine for us. I was also in London for a while, but I am not the expert when it comes to the technical stuff, unfortunately.
Well, I'm going to suggest to Harris, look at the presentation, the masterclass we did a few months ago with with Bianca, where I think Bianca Marie Rathi, where I think she showed us how to set up our phones to the correct, well, not the correct setting, but to the setting she recommended for a PAL region. So anyway, I'll refer Harris back to have a look at that. Thank you, Kassy. So, oh yes, scripting, filming ourselves and reading a script. How do we do that without looking like we're reading a script? And also, this is from London 123. I'm not sure what London 123's real name is. But they're asking, how do we, if we've got too much to remember, we're going to have to read a script. So how do you handle that?
So there are multiple different ways. So there are some apps that you can use. You can either, like, if you have a proper setup, you can have like a teleprompter. But then if you don't have a teleprompter, there are apps that you can download on, if you have an iPad. I don't have any of these things, but if you have an iPad, you can also load this into your iPad, and you can put your iPad in front of you, and you can set it up so that it looks like you're like staring at the screen the same way that, at the camera, the same way that you are sort of like you would be when you're on TV. Worst case, you can use your phone as well. There are also apps on your phone that actually put the text over your camera, so you're just like looking at your camera as you are saying this. The other thing but this doesn't work on TikTok if you're using the green screen feature. So unfortunately for me, I just memorize my lines. But usually you can sort of take it line by line, because you can edit if you can't say something all in one go, and that's fine, because nobody has like that kind of memory unless you're really good at this and you've been doing it for years. But if you have to memorize like 20 minutes worth of stuff, you're probably not going to be able to do it. So usually what you can do is you can do it line by line, and then when you're editing it together, this is when B-roll really comes in handy, because it's like, when you stop and then there's a new shot, what you can do is you can put B-roll on top of it so that it covers the part when you change a new shot. So instead of seeing the jump cut into the next shot of you saying the next sentence, you cover it up with something else that you are talking about, for example. So yeah, there are lots of sort of workarounds. There's lots of apps out there. You just Google them, like, teleprompter app on your phone, do it on your iPad if you have another screen, or just, take it line by line. Usually I find if I'm memorizing the lines, I just say it to myself a few times, and then, then I can try and say it again. And then, you just keep sort of doing that process, and then you sort of figure out a way that works for you.
Excellent. And just to rewind a little bit, Kassy, Catherine and Andrew have both chipped in about the frames per second rate. You need 25 for TV, says Catherine, and you can now get 25 on native camera on iPhone. likewise, Andrew saying TV is 25. Internet video mainly runs at 30, so it depends on what your video will be shown on. So Harris, I hope that helps answer your question. Great, then a couple of final questions and then we'll let you go to bed, Kassy, because I guess it's almost 2 o'clock with you in the morning.
Oh, good.
Catherine's asking, because you mentioned green screen, what editing software do you use when dealing with something shot on green screen?
Yeah, cool. So I use Instagram and TikTok's. Well, actually, I mostly use Instagram's green screen feature. So it's basically if you go to stories or reels, there is a filter by Instagram called green screen that you can do. And basically you load it up and then you can upload a photo to be in the background. And generally it's pretty good as long as you have enough of a contrast between you and the background. So when I was blonde in some of the videos, it was really difficult to be against like a white screen because it would think that my hair was the same as the wall, but then I would sort of have a background maybe like outside that was night. So then it would be able to sort of pick up on that. And then another tip that somebody else told me, which I haven't tried, is actually you can buy just like green paper and tape it up on your wall and you can just stand in front of it. And that actually works enough for like as a green screen. So I found that both Instagram and TikTok's green screen features work pretty well actually. So you can actually use them on their phone, or if you want to be more advanced, then yeah, you can tape up your own green screen behind you, and then you can then edit that in Premiere and Final Cut. There are like ways that you can basically add filters and like I'm not actually very good at this, so I usually just use the app on the phone, but there are ways that you can sort of then green screen yourself on the computer.
Wow, thank you. Some great tips there, Kassy.